A Muslim state senator in Virginia just introduced a bill to make Islamophobia a crime, not a civil offense, a crime. Senator Azlan Salim wants people arrested and charged if they assault someone because they're Muslim, or even if they're not Muslim but the attacker thought they were. This would create a special protected class under law for one religion. Republicans are calling this unconstitutional thought policing. Civil liberties groups are sounding alarms. And this is happening in Virginia, a purple swing state where this could actually pass. Stay with me because this has massive First Amendment implications that could reach the Supreme Court. What's up, everyone? Marcus Reed here with Senate Decoded, where I break down the laws and bills that actually affect your rights. Before we dive into this constitutional minefield, if you want unfiltered coverage of controversial legislation that threatens free speech and constitutional rights, smash that subscribe button right now. Most media won't give you both sides of this story. I will. Don't miss it. All right, here's the situation. Virginia State Senator Saddam Azlan Salim, a Muslim Democrat from Northern Virginia, just introduced legislation that would officially define Islamophobia as a hate crime in assault and battery cases. If you physically attack someone because they're Muslim, or because you think they're Muslim, even if they're not, you'd face enhanced criminal penalties under a specific Islamophobia statute. This isn't theoretical. This is a real bill with real criminal penalties. That could send people to prison for years based on what they were thinking when they committed a crime. I'm breaking down the exact text of this bill, who Senator Salim is and why he's pushing this, the constitutional problems with criminalizing thought, how this compares to existing hate crime laws, what Republicans and civil liberties advocates are saying, and whether this has any chance of becoming law. Let's get into it. Let's start by reading what this bill actually says, word for word, because when we're talking about criminal law that could send people to prison, details matter. The official definition: Senator Salim's bill would define Islamophobia, quote, as it relates to the crime of assault and battery as malicious prejudice or hatred directed toward Islam or Muslims. Let me break down every piece of that definition as it relates to assault and battery. First, this isn't criminalizing speech. You can still say whatever you want about Islam or Muslims. This only kicks in when there's physical violence, assault, threatening harm, or battery, actual physical contact harm. So, if you get in a bar fight and punch someone, that's assault and battery, regular crime. But if you punch someone because they're Muslim, that becomes an Islamophobia-enhanced hate crime with longer prison sentences. Malicious prejudice or hatred. This is where it gets legally murky. The prosecutor would have to prove you had prejudice, prejudgment, bias against Muslims, or hatred, intense dislike or hostility toward Muslims, and that this prejudice or hatred was directed toward Islam or Muslims. How do they prove what's in your head? We'll get to that. The perceived Muslim provision. Here's where this gets really interesting and controversial. The bill summary states, the Islamophobia definition applies regardless of whether the victim is actually a practitioner of Islam, provided that the perpetrator targeted such victim based on a perceived adherence to such faith. Translation: if you attack a Sikh because you think Sikhs are Muslim, you get charged with Islamophobia hate crime even though Sikhs aren't Muslim. If you attack an Arab Christian because you assume all Arabs are Muslim, you get charged with Islamophobia hate crime even though the victim is Christian. If you attack an atheist from Pakistan because of their appearance, you get charged with Islamophobia hate crime. Why this provision exists? The perceived adherence clause exists because many hate crimes are based on ignorance and stereotypes. Sikhs wearing turbans have been attacked by people who think they're Muslim. Arab Christians have been targeted because attackers assume all Middle Eastern people are Muslim. South Asian Hindus have been assaulted because of their appearance, so the law tries to capture the intent, anti-Muslim hatred, even when the victim isn't actually Muslim. But here's the constitutional problem. This means you can be charged with a thought crime based on incorrect thoughts. You thought someone was Muslim, they weren't, but you still get charged with anti-Muslim hatred. That's punishing you for what was in your head, not for objective reality. The religious conviction includes Islam clause. The bill specifically clarifies that religious conviction includes Islam. You might think, isn't that obvious? Islam is obviously a religion protected under the First Amendment, but this makes it explicit in Virginia criminal law that Islam is a protected religious conviction. Some critics will say this is stating the obvious to virtue signal. Supporters will say this is necessary clarity to ensure consistent application. The DEI office involvement. Here's something that will make conservatives' heads explode. The bill directs the Department of State Police, in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, to include the bill's definition of Islamophobia in its hate crime reporting central repository. The DEI office, which many Republicans want abolished, would be involved in defining and tracking Islamophobia crimes. This means DEI gets embedded in law enforcement. DEI helps define what counts as Islamophobia. DEI influences how these crimes are tracked and reported. Republicans see this as progressive ideology being codified into criminal law. How this works in practice, let's walk through real scenarios. Scenario 1. Bar fight, no Islamophobia. You and another guy argue about football, punches are thrown. Charge, assault and battery, class 1 misdemeanor. Penalty, up to 12 months jail, $2,500 fine. Scenario 2. Anti-Muslim attack, Islamophobia enhancement. You see someone you think is Muslim, you yell, "Go back to your country, terrorist." You punch them. Charge, assault and battery plus Islamophobia, hate crime enhancement. Penalty could be elevated to felony, up to 5 years prison. Scenario 3, road rage, disputed motive. You have road rage incident. You cut someone off, get out, punch them. They happen to be Muslim. They claim you said something anti-Muslim. You deny it. Prosecutor has to decide. Was this Islamophobia or just road rage? This is where it gets complicated. How do you prove motive? What prosecutors would need to prove motive? Evidence could include your statements, what you said before, during, or after the attack, your social media, posts criticizing Islam or Muslims, witness testimony, people who heard what you said. Context, did this happen near a mosque? During Ramadan? Your history, past statements or actions showing anti-Muslim bias. But here's the scary part. If you've ever criticized Islam online, posted about Islamic terrorism, or shared articles critical of Muslim immigration, prosecutors could use that as evidence of Islamophobic motive, even if your attack had nothing to do with religion. Existing Virginia law. Virginia already has hate crime laws that enhance penalties for crimes motivated by race, religion in general, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability. So the question becomes, if religion is already protected, why do we need a separate, specific Islamophobia statute? Salim's argument would be anti-Muslim hate crimes are underreported. Police and prosecutors don't take them seriously. Having a specific definition ensures consistent application. Muslims face unique discrimination that deserves specific recognition. This brings awareness and accountability. This is redundant. Religion is already protected. This creates a privileged class where Muslims get special protection. Other religions don't. Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists don't have their own specific statutes. This is virtue signaling disguised as legislation. This could be weaponized to silence criticism of Islam. We'll dive deeper into these arguments in a minute. Now, let's talk about who Senator Saddam Azlan Salim is, because understanding the person behind the bill matters. Salim is a Bengali American state senator representing Virginia's 37th district. His district includes all of Fairfax City, all of Falls Church City, parts of Fairfax County. This is Northern Virginia, the densely populated, diverse, wealthy suburbs of Washington, D.C. Northern Virginia is deep blue. It's one of the most progressive parts of Virginia. His constituents include federal government employees, tech workers, highly educated professionals, large immigrant communities, including significant Muslim population, progressive activists. In this district, a bill protecting Muslims from hate crimes would have strong constituent support. Salim is a Democrat. He's part of the progressive wing of the party. He serves on numerous Virginia commissions: Joint Commission on Technology and Science, Blockchain Advisory Committee, Joint Commission to oversee transition into retail cannabis market, Virginia Child Support Guidelines Review Panel, Electric Vehicle Rebate Program Advisory Council, Information Technology Advisory Council, Virginia Commission on Intergovernmental Cooperation, Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. This shows he's deeply integrated into Virginia's legislative infrastructure, particularly on progressive policy issues. His identity and motivation: Salim is Muslim and Bengali American, from Bangladesh background. His perspective on Islamophobia is likely informed by personal experience or observation of anti-Muslim discrimination, advocacy from Muslim community organizations like CARE, concerns about post-9/11 discrimination continuing 20-plus years later, recent spikes in hate crimes following international events. His name: I need to address the elephant in the room. His first name is Saddam. Some critics will inevitably focus on this, associating it with Saddam Hussein. But Saddam is a common Arabic name meaning one who confronts or powerful confronter. Millions of people worldwide have this name. Judging legislation based on someone's name would be exactly the kind of prejudice this bill aims to address. That said, in American politics, names matter, and some voters will have negative associations. The Muslim community in Northern Virginia has one of the largest Muslim populations on the East Coast. Large Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Afghan, Arab, Iranian immigrant communities, dozens of mosques and Islamic centers, Muslim cultural organizations, political advocacy groups like KR, Council on American Islamic Relations, Muslim elected officials. Salim is likely responding to pressure from these communities who feel vulnerable and underprotected. Fox News reached out to Salim for comment. He hasn't responded yet, as of this script. Questions for Salim. What specific incidents prompted this bill? Do you have data on anti-Muslim hate crimes in Virginia? How do you respond to First Amendment concerns? Would you support similar specific protections for Christians, Jews, Hindus, etc.? How do you define the line between legitimate criticism of Islam and Islamophobia? Without his answers, we're analyzing the bill in a vacuum. The political calculation. Why introduce this bill now? Possible reasons. Constituent pressure. Muslim advocacy groups demanded action. National climate. Rising tensions over Middle East conflicts, political signaling. This energizes his progressive base for re-election, genuine conviction. He believes Muslims need this protection, legislative legacy. He wants to be known for this issue, the political risk. Even in deep blue Northern Virginia, this bill is controversial. There are moderate Democrats and independents who will see this as government overreach, special treatment, threat to free speech, and statewide, Virginia is purple. A bill like this plays well in Fairfax, but terribly in Southwest Virginia. So Salim is either very confident in his district's support, willing to be a martyr for the cause, not planning to run for statewide office because this bill will follow him forever. Now let's get into the constitutional and legal problems with this bill, because there are serious issues that would likely result in court challenges if it passes. The Supreme Court precedent on hate crimes. In 1993, the Supreme Court ruled in Wisconsin versus Mitchell that hate crime sentence enhancements are constitutional. The court said, the First Amendment protects thought, speech, and association, but it doesn't protect violent conduct. Motive has always been relevant in criminal sentencing, premeditation versus passion, etc. Hate crime laws target the conduct, violence, not the thought. So in general, hate crime laws are constitutional. But this bill has specific constitutional vulnerabilities. Problem number 1, vagueness. Criminal statutes must be clear enough that a reasonable person knows what's prohibited. Islamophobia is not a clearly defined legal term. What counts as malicious prejudice or hatred toward Islam? Is criticizing Islamic theology Islamophobia? Is opposing Sharia law Islamophobia? Is critiquing Muhammad Islamophobia? Is opposing Islamic immigration policy Islamophobia? Is condemning ISIS or Hamas Islamophobia? Different people define Islamophobia very differently. Muslim advocacy groups often define it broadly to include any criticism of Islam, Islamic practices, or Muslim-majority governments. Critics say legitimate criticism of religion, ideology, and politics should never be labeled phobic. If the statute doesn't clearly define Islamophobia, it's unconstitutionally vague. Problem number 2, viewpoint discrimination. The First Amendment prohibits the government from favoring or disfavoring particular viewpoints. If the law says anti-Muslim views are hate, enhanced punishment, but anti-Christian views are not specifically hate, and anti-Jewish views are not specifically hate, and anti-Hindu views are not specifically hate, then the government is singling out one viewpoint, anti-Islam, for special punishment. That's viewpoint discrimination, which is unconstitutional. Problem number 3, Establishment Clause. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment prohibits government from establishing religion or favoring one religion over others by creating a special legal category for Islam that doesn't exist for Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, or any other religion. Is the government favoring Islam? One could argue yes, Islam is receiving special state protection not given to other faiths. Problem number 4, equal protection. The 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection under the law. If a Christian is assaulted for being Christian, they get generic religious hate crime protection. If a Muslim is assaulted for being Muslim, they get specific Islamophobia hate crime protection with dedicated tracking, DEI office involvement, and heightened awareness. That's unequal treatment. Problem number 5, chilling effect on free speech. Even though the statute only applies to violence, not speech, it could chill speech. Here's how. Imagine you write an article critical of Islamic gender practices. A week later, you have an unrelated altercation with someone who happens to be Muslim, road rage, bar argument, whatever. Could prosecutors use your article as evidence of Islamophobic motive? Potentially, yes. So people might self-censor criticism of Islam out of fear that any prior statement could be used against them if they ever get in any altercation with a Muslim. That's a chilling effect on protected speech. The arguments in favor of the bill. Now let me steelman the other side because there are legitimate arguments for this bill. Argument 1, anti-Muslim violence is a real documented problem. Data shows hate crimes against Muslims spiked dramatically after 9/11. They remain elevated compared to pre-9/11 levels. Many attacks on Sikhs, Arabs, and South Asians stem from anti-Muslim prejudice. Muslims report feeling unsafe in many parts of the country. This isn't hypothetical. Muslims are targeted for violence. Argument 2, specific recognition matters. Having Islamophobia specifically named in law sends a message that the state takes this seriously. guides police and prosecutors, creates data tracking to understand the scope of the problem, brings public awareness. Generic religious hate might not capture the specific dynamics of anti-Muslim hatred. Argument 3, this doesn't criminalize speech. Supporters will correctly note, you can still criticize Islam all you want. You can still say offensive things about Muslims. This only applies when you physically attack someone. The First Amendment protects speech, not violence. So accusations of thought policing are overblown. Argument 4, we do this for other groups. We have specific legal recognition for anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, racism, hatred based on race, homophobia, hatred of LGBTQ people. Why shouldn't Muslims get the same specific recognition? Argument 5, intent matters in criminal law. Criminal law has always considered intent. Murder versus manslaughter, premeditated versus crime of passion, self-defense versus aggression. Considering whether someone attacked someone because of their religion is just another form of intent analysis. The arguments against the bill. Now the other side. Argument 1, this is thought policing. Even though it only applies to violence, it punishes people more harshly based on their beliefs. Two people commit the same physical act, punch someone. One gets 12 months, the other gets 5 years. Why? Because of what they were thinking. That's thought crime, even if it's attached to conduct. Argument 2, religion is already protected. Virginia's existing hate crime law already covers religion. This bill is therefore redundant special pleading, creating hierarchy among religions. Argument 3, this will silence legitimate criticism. Even if the law says it doesn't apply to speech, the chilling effect is real. People will be afraid that any criticism of Islam could be used as evidence against them later. Argument 4. Islamophobia is a weaponized term. In practice, Muslim advocacy groups use Islamophobia to shut down criticism of Islamic theology, criticism of Islamic practices, treatment of women, LGBTQ people, criticism of Sharia law, criticism of Islamic terrorism, criticism of Muslim-majority governments. Enshrining this term in criminal law gives it official sanction. Argument 5. This could backfire on Muslims. Some moderate Muslims warn this paints Muslims as perpetual victims. This makes Muslims seem like they demand special treatment. This could increase resentment. This plays into Muslims want to impose their will narratives. My honest legal assessment. If this bill passes, I predict it would face immediate court challenges on vagueness, viewpoint, discrimination, establishment clause, equal protection. And I think there's a significant chance it would be struck down. The Supreme Court might uphold the general concept of hate crimes, but a statute that specifically elevates one religion's protection above all others would be very difficult to defend constitutionally. Now let's talk politics, because whether this bill becomes law depends entirely on Virginia's political landscape. Virginia's current political makeup. Virginia is a purple state with divided government. Governor Glenn Youngkin, Republican, but term limited, can't run again in 2025 state Senate. Democrats control narrow majority state House. Republicans control narrow majority. So for this bill to become law, needs to pass Democrat-controlled Senate, possible. Needs to pass Republican-controlled House, very unlikely. Needs governor's signature, Youngkin would probably veto. The Senate path. In the state Senate, Salim's bill would need committee approval, likely in a progressive committee. Floor vote might pass with all Democrats voting yes. Progressive Democrats will support it, but moderate Democrats will be nervous. Senators from rural or swing districts will worry about backlash from constituents being labeled anti-free speech, losing moderate voters, becoming campaign attack targets. The House reality. In the Republican-controlled House, this bill is dead on arrival. Republicans will refuse to give it a hearing or bring it to a vote just to force Democrats to take public positions. Use it as proof that Democrats want to criminalize conservative views. Campaign on Democrats attack your First Amendment rights. Republican response. Republicans are already preparing their talking points. Democrats want to criminalize thought. One religion gets special treatment. Why not Christianity? This is Sharia law by another name. Virginia Democrats side with radical Islam over free speech. This is what happens when progressives control government. These attack lines will be everywhere in 2026 campaigns. Democratic dilemma. Democrats face an impossible choice. If they support the bill, energize progressive base, secure Muslim voters, but alienate moderates, give Republicans campaign ammunition, risk losing swing districts. If they oppose the bill, avoid controversy, appeal to moderates, but anger progressive base, lose Muslim voters. Face primary challenges from the left. If they stay silent, try to avoid taking position, hope it dies quietly, but look cowardly and unprincipled. The CARE factor. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, is likely pushing hard for this bill, but CARE is controversial. Your document mentions Republican lawmakers demand Treasury probe Kair over alleged Hamas ties and terrorism concerns. If Kair is the visible advocate for this bill, Republicans will say an organization with alleged terrorist ties is trying to criminalize criticism of Islam. That tells you everything you need to know. That's politically devastating. Will this pass? My prediction, no, this bill will not become law. Here's why. Most likely scenario, passes committee in Senate, dies in committee or fails, floor vote never reaches House. Or passes Senate, narrow vote, dies in Republican House, never reaches governor. Or somehow passes both chambers, Governor Youngkin vetoes no override. Would need 2/3 majority. The 2026 campaign impact. Even though it won't pass, this bill will be huge in 2026 Virginia campaigns. Every Republican candidate will say, my opponent supports criminalizing free speech. Vote for me to protect your constitutional rights. Every Democrat will have to answer, do you support Salim's Islamophobia bill, yes or no? And there's no good answer. Yes, years lose moderates. No, EEs lose progressives. National implications. This Virginia bill will get national attention because it's a test case for progressive legislation. It raises First Amendment issues. It involves Islam, always controversial. Virginia is a swing state, so it matters. Conservative media will cover this extensively. Fox News, Daily Wire, Breitbart Talk Radio. They'll use Virginia as proof that Democrats want to criminalize conservative views. Progressive media will cover it as necessary protection for vulnerable community response to rising hate crimes, Republicans refusing to protect Muslims. The real winner. Regardless of whether this passes, Senator Salim wins politically in his district. He'll be hailed as a hero by his Muslim constituents and progressive base. He'll be reelected easily, and he'll have name recognition statewide if he ever runs for higher office. So even if the bill fails, he succeeds. Let's zoom out and look at how this fits into national and international trends on hate speech and Islamophobia. Other U.S. states, Virginia isn't the first state to consider Islamophobia-specific legislation. Several states have introduced similar bills. California, New York, Illinois, Michigan. Large Muslim population. But none have passed. Why not? Constitutional concerns. Political opposition. Backlash from civil liberties groups. Fear of setting dangerous precedent, Virginia would be the first state to actually pass such a law. Federal level, there's no federal Islamophobia-specific hate crime law. The Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, 2009, covers religion generally, not specific religions. Some progressive members of Congress have proposed Islamophobia-specific legislation, but it's never advanced. International comparisons. United Kingdom. The UK has hate speech laws that criminalize threatening, abusive, or insulting words about religion, inciting religious hatred. Consequences, people arrested for social media posts, comedians investigated for jokes about Islam, critics of Islam prosecuted, but the UK doesn't have a First Amendment. Free speech is more limited there. European Union. Many EU countries criminalize hate speech, including Islamophobia, but again, they don't have American-style free speech protections. Canada. Canada has hate speech provisions, but with significant court-imposed limits due to free expression concerns. Muslim-majority countries. Many Muslim-majority countries have blasphemy laws that criminalize insulting Islam. Insulting the Prophet Muhammad, leaving Islam, apostasy, penalties range from fines to death. The slippery slope argument, critics warn of progression. Step 1, criminalize violence motivated by Islamophobia, seems reasonable. Step 2, criminalize speech that incites Islamophobia, more concerning. Step 3, criminalize criticism of Islam generally, blasphemy law. Supporters say, slippery slope is a fallacy. We're only talking about violence. But skeptics point to UK and European examples as proof it can slide. What makes America different? The First Amendment makes the U.S. the most protective of speech in the world. You can legally burn the American flag, burn the Quran or Bible, deny the Holocaust, morally repugnant but legal, protest funerals with hateful signs, say deeply offensive things about any religion. This is more speech protection than any other country. So importing European-style hate speech concepts faces massive constitutional barriers here. All right, let me bring this entire story together. Virginia State Senator Saddam Azlan Salim introduced legislation to criminalize Islamophobia as a specific hate crime category in assault and battery cases. The bill would enhance criminal penalties for violence motivated by prejudice toward Islam or Muslims, even if the victim isn't actually Muslim, but the attacker thought they were. The bill involves the DEI office in defining and tracking these crimes. Here are the key takeaways. First, this would make Virginia the first U.S. state to specifically criminalize Islamophobia as a distinct legal category, separate from general religious hate crimes. Second, The bill has serious constitutional vulnerabilities, including vagueness, viewpoint discrimination, establishment clause violations, and equal protection issues that would likely trigger court challenges. Third, proponents argue this addresses real anti-Muslim violence, provides necessary specific protection, and doesn't criminalize speech, only violence with proven Islamophobic motive. Fourth, critics argue this is unconstitutional thought policing, creates a privileged class for one religion, will chill legitimate criticism of Islam, and weaponizes the term Islamophobia. Fifth, the bill will likely pass the Democrat-controlled Senate but die in the Republican-controlled House, making it more of a political statement than actual policy. Sixth, this will become a major campaign issue in 2026 Virginia elections, with Republicans using it to claim Democrats criminalize free speech and Democrats trying to navigate between progressive and moderate voters. Seventh, no other U.S. state has passed similar legislation despite attempts in California, New York, Illinois, and Michigan. Eighth, this reflects broader tension between European-style hate speech restrictions and American First Amendment protections, a tension that will only intensify. Is this necessary protection for a vulnerable religious minority, or is this unconstitutional thought policing that privileges one religion over others? Should violence against Muslims be treated differently than violence against Christians, Jews, or Hindus? Where's the line between protecting people from violence and restricting criticism of religion and ideology? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear all perspectives on this. And if you want coverage of controversial legislation that raises real constitutional questions, hit that subscribe button. I'm Marcus Reed with Senate Decoded, breaking down the laws that affect your rights. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.